Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and I wanted to try something different and do a review for the Super Mario Bros. Movie since I just watched it. So please like, share, and subscribe if any of that attracts you. Let's start with my history, certainly in the setup here, in that this definitely is going to be a movie, I think, not for me as much as this is not probably going to be a review for anybody who really already enjoyed the movie or have already seen it. Uh, this is definitely going to come more from the perspective of somebody who had an NES in at least 1985 and played the original Super Mario Bros. Games and has played Donkey Kong, which this movie doesn't really target that audience at all. It makes some kind of failed attempts at it, but it really doesn't want that audience. It wants a much newer audience, much like the Sonic movie. And to make a comparison, I did watch the first Sonic movie with not really having any reference or backstory to Sonic. I played a little bit of Sonic when I was younger, but not that much. I definitely didn't watch the cartoons, didn't watch the comics, or anything like that. And so coming in fresh, watching the Sonic movie, I felt like that was a fairly fine standalone piece of art using a character that honestly could have just been any kind of monster. Where in the Mario movie, there's a lot of feeling like it should be Mario. And in particular, I will warn, there's a lot of feeling that Princess Peach, who is really the real protagonist of the Super Mario Bros. Movie, should have been closer to Princess Peach, which is in itself a catch-22 because Princess Peach is, if not the archetype of the damsel in distress, she certainly is the stereotype of the damsel in distress. That is all she has ever been until fairly recently. You get a little bit of her personality here and there in Mario Odyssey, and Princess Peach Showtime certainly was a new experiment as far as giving her more personality, and I imagine every now and then you get a little bit of personality here and there. But if I'm thinking of Princess Peach, I'm thinking of the Princess Peach of Mario 64, where she first had a voice and she's inviting Mario over for cake at her castle, which is very much a demure, regal type personality. A lady who is going to very often get kidnapped by Bowser and not be able to fight back or defend herself. A royal person who would never need to lift a finger or have any kind of real abilities physically as far as all of that. And that's just not something that we see in the Princess Peach that we get in the Mario Bros. Movie. So take it from me that if that's not the kind of criticism you want to hear, then you might as well stop listening now, because it really is her movie, and this character really is very different. As far as Mario, now, it's also true, certainly Mario and Luigi, or Jumpman as he originally was in Donkey Kong, aren't really characters either in those first few games. They are the archetypical, stereotypical hero rescuing the damsel in distress, and they don't really have any personality at all until you start getting into having some kind of flourish of personality in Mario 64. And even in that comparison, Princess Peach is given like a full letter of voice acting to give her personality in Mario 64 at the beginning, inviting Mario over for cake, where Mario really is just given a few sound effects that you hear more often, but it's just like whop, woohoo, yay, things like that. It's not actually words that he's speaking. In fact, I'm trying to stretch my mind here. I'm not sure that Mario has ever been depicted as anything other than a silent protagonist in the games. Let's pretty much ignore the original Mario cartoons with the wrestler, or Mario in comic books. Certainly, as a character, he has been inside media before and given a little bit more personality that ways. When it tends to be more of a third-party developer making something like Mario RPG, the characters might get a little bit more personality. But typically, if it is listed as a first-party Nintendo game, regardless of whether that really was developed by Nintendo in-house or a second-party developer that's just going uncredited, which very likely a lot of the Nintendo games, a lot of portions of Mario games were made by second-party developers going uncredited. But yeah, when it tends to be listed as a Nintendo game, Mario has no real personality. Luigi has a little bit more personality as a character because he is given that scaredy cat label, at least when you're doing the Luigi's Mansions games and some of the Mario Party style mini games. That being said, they kind of try to ignore Luigi being more of a scaredy cat outside of those games, so he loses that personality in the main games and really is just a palette swap replacement for Mario. To start off with, the movie starts in Brooklyn, and I really don't think it added anything to the movie to start in Brooklyn. There are Easter eggs for other NES games. You'll see some Punch-Out characters on the wall. In one scene, you'll see an arcade machine labeled as Jumpman. You'll see Pauline, the original damsel in distress in the Donkey Kong game, who now canonically is not Princess Peach. Arguably, there might also be a Princess Toad, and there is also the Mario Odyssey princess character who is implied to exist in that you see one of the Mario Odyssey collectible star characters in the movie. That character in particular is kind of age inappropriate in what it says, and there's a couple sections there that we'll eventually get to. But yeah, you start in Brooklyn. It establishes that Mario and Luigi are humans in a human world, and that you see a lot of other humans. They kind of, Illumination, I think, went out of their way to add way too many extra characters as far as just human characters that don't really matter. Some of which are addressing an issue, certainly, in that Mario and Luigi are just your standard white guys, white Italian people, and they're really the only humans that you see in the games. So you'll see some people of color as secondary characters showing up there too, but it is all to no avail. I mean, it's just adding characters that will disappear in the next scene and never really matter, and you already run into that problem getting multiplied once you actually get to the video game world, which I guess is what you would have to call it, because there are several lands in that video game world, like the Mushroom Kingdom and Bowser's Domain and Donkey Kong Country land, whatever it's called. They imply a desert area too, but you don't actually see that section. But yeah, inherently I would have preferred to see Mario start in the Mushroom Kingdom and have a little bit of an experience there. Maybe start in the very first scene with the training section instead of it being a really way too long to get to that point and do that setup. It seems like that whole first setup is just for uncalled out Easter eggs in the background that aren't mentioned, and maybe a slight reference to the live action Mario movie, which I have no idea and seriously doubt Nintendo ever really would have approved referencing that movie. which was such a huge failure and stopped Nintendo from making any more movies for a very long time. I also want to say, getting back to the idea that this is not a movie for me, I absolutely hate the animation style, particularly in the close-ups. It is a CG animation style with kind of an illumination effect on it, where cells and pixels kind of glow, or they just have too much of a reflection to them than you would have in the real world. Unfortunately, I think it is pretty much the case that Western animators, even though they are very inconsistent in their styles, have all fallen down the path of not being able to draw anything that would be a more traditional 2D animation style, or the bright, colorful types of color palettes that you would see in older Mario games. And the style that this movie has really doesn't match Mario Odyssey either, which is more of a 3D animation style, because this is still going for a appearance that's a little too realistic, and what it ends up looking like is it's plasticky, and that it is more like action figures have been animated very smoothly, but still just action figures being animated. So that was kind of an immediate turnoff. Throughout the entirety of the movie, I was very bored, which, yeah, that's saying something too. It is kind of cram-packed with characters and action sequences, but it doesn't really have that big impact to me to make me interested. So even 10-20 minutes into the movie, I was starting to make notes here to just review the movie, because I was just not interested. It really failed to grab me at the front of the movie. On one other element where it fails to grab me is that before we even get into the outside of Brooklyn, it became very obvious that the movie had chosen to play pop music instead of playing more connected from Mario game songs. You do occasionally throughout the movie hear a few lines of a Mario song, but very quickly they stop that. They don't want to play even half of a full Mario background level song, instead of playing just what would be pop music. And by pop music, I mean closer to 1980s pop music, which would be most people's parents' music at the time, not the music that kids would have been listening to so much as far as 1985, just to pick a year. So yeah, and the pop music is really just supposed to pop up the action sequences, which there's several extra action sequences. The first one you see in the movie is not necessary because it is happening in Brooklyn. It's not because anybody is attacking them or a bad guy. They are literally just running from one place to the other, perhaps slightly establishing that Mario has a ridiculous amount of agility like he does in the game. Although, on that, every single action sequence you see will have a character doing moves that are in no way close to what you can actually do in the games. They are very much more parkour, wall runner type moves that you just don't have in the older games. Maybe some of it way more parkour than even in Mario 64, where you're bouncing around 3D environments, and every single sequence that tries to look like a 2D or 2.5D level really comes off more as a 3D level, where there is more items in the foreground and the background than it really should be. It almost would be a funny joke to add, say, Luigi to have an imaginary vision in which he flattens a 3D environment into a 2D platformer for Mario in his mind, and he's watching in awe as Mario is jumping around a 2D platformer. But adding anything that is not canon from the game is going to probably rub some people in the wrong way, and I definitely felt that a tiny bit throughout the movie, is that there definitely were elements that were just added because the movie wanted to go that way, instead of staying closer to something that actually would have been made by Nintendo, or that has been made by Nintendo in the past. So you get Mario and Luigi through just contrivance, a unexplained stupid contrivance, end up in the video game world via warp pipes. They get split up. Luigi gets sent to Bowser's domain, and that is pretty much the end of Luigi for at least the first half of the movie, I would say. Luigi shows up, but he's really just captured, and effectively he becomes the damsel in distress that needs to be rescued, although there is perhaps less focus on that than there even should be. But yeah, Luigi adds practically nothing to the movie, and yeah, I'm not sure I ever really expected that he would add anything to the movie, but he certainly just lives up to being a damsel in distress and replacement. That gets Mario to the Mushroom Kingdom, where they had previously established that Mario does not like mushrooms and doesn't want to eat them, which again is a thing you would add to the canon for no reason. And so it's just something added to the movie that isn't really necessary. You see a lot of this as they try to have small bits of comedy, but there is really no connecting through line of comedy, nor for a modern movie targeting young kids is there enough comedy bits happening at once. Like modern comedic writing, really you need like a joke every, let's estimate, about 30 seconds, where this movie has a joke that I noticed maybe every 4 or 5 minutes. It is just an offhand comedic thing. Otherwise the movie is mostly an action movie, which maybe it should have leaned more into that and not had any comedy sections. Once Mario gets to the Mushroom Kingdom, he runs into Toad, who is a character that is added to the run and does really nothing. I don't believe he's actually involved in any of the fights and actually contributes in any way to helping Mario and Luigi, other than giving his support. He does, at the very beginning, show Mario how to get to the princess's castle, and he distracts the guards who are pointlessly trying to block him from entering the castle. And that's where you meet Princess Peach, right after you see a voxel-based map of the magical video game world, which I have no idea why they decided to make a voxel animation type map. If I'd seen more of that, I would have leaned into thinking maybe the Nintendo Lego sets were supposed to also be kind of promoted here, but that didn't happen, so I don't know why they went with voxel 3D squares, Minecraft-y style map design, since that is nowhere close to any map I've ever seen in a Mario game, and I've played pretty much every Mario game that exists. You would assume if they were going to show a map, that would have been the point, to bring it down to an 8-bit or a 16-bit pixel image of the world map, and then that could have been a more reference Easter egg type experience there. The Easter eggs, for the most part, kind of stop once you get into the Mushroom Kingdom. You do see the Mushroom Kingdom, you do see characters from Mario games, but they aren't as much Easter eggs as they are just background characters or background elements that you see. And after seeing the map and looking at how Princess Peach's throne room, which is an enclosed interior area, is slightly differently animated than the exterior of the Mushroom Kingdom, and artistically and just stylistically is a fairly different experience. But yeah, it's just different. I imagine a different team was given that scene. It doesn't really change anything, but it is weird that even using CGI and probably reducing the budget and saving on money by using CGI, that they still have fairly disconnected art styles as far as the color palette and animation styles as far as what the different scenes look like. I would have personally liked to see a Mario movie employ major Japanese animators, being an anime fan myself, to make something that was along the lines of Spirited Away from Ghibli, although I doubt you would get Ghibli actually himself to animate a Mario movie. But that would have been closer of a reverence, I think, as far as just how the animation goes. But it probably wouldn't have sold as well, let's just face it. Parents would have been less willing to take their kids to a Mario movie that was 2D and animated like Spirited Away, and adult fans would have potentially been less likely to watch a Mario movie that was 2D animated, just because there is a large group of people who are just not fans of the anime style. And even in that, the argument of making a Mario movie in the anime style only really comes from the fact that Nintendo is a Japanese company, but it completely ignores the fact that Mario himself and the Mario series is very much designed to be attractive to a Western audience more than even a Japanese audience goes. But yeah, you meet Princess Peach. She's clearly the protagonist. She has way more lines of dialogue, I feel like, throughout the entire movie. She is clearly the one who is triggering all the actions and everything and causing all of the success throughout the movie. And that inherently gives her a personality where she has none in the game. I will say that then creates a completely different character. And as a completely different character, not called Princess Peach, she's probably fine as a character. I would have preferred, though, if that was going to be the case, then the movie really should have just started with her and focused with her the entire time, and we should have just gone through the hero's journey with Princess Peach being the hero. Meanwhile, Mario is not given enough opportunities to go through a hero's journey because he's not the real protagonist of the movie. I don't really feel like the personality they give Princess Peach works for Princess Peach. There is nothing regal about her. There's nothing royal about her. They do, at a later point, go into her backstory and fully imply that she is a human that just ended up in the Mushroom Kingdom, or she came from a different dimension. Regardless, she's not a toad, and as such, she is different. But I'm pretty sure the implication is that she was a human. But yeah, she doesn't order Mario to assist her or in any way command any kind of royal decrees or anything as a princess. So the whole princess part is out. They call her Princess Peach throughout the entire time. There is, I believe, also a Princess Toad in a couple of games where they named a Princess Toad. No, maybe not. Maybe I'm confusing that with Princess Daisy. Princess Daisy not showing up or really seemingly referenced at all in the movie, which is the one thing I can say was probably a smart move, because then that keeps the characters a little bit more streamlined and easier to follow. But there's still a ton of characters, ton of unnamed characters. You go through the Mushroom Kingdom, you see hundreds of toads. None of them have mentioned a name. You see guards at the castle wearing conquistador style helmets as guards, which is also something that maybe is in Mario RPG, but that's probably it, and I don't think it's even in Mario RPG. So that again feels like something that was just added because the writers of the movie felt like it was worth adding. Then you get to the main training sequence that you will see in the trailer, which honestly only goes on for a few minutes, and you see Mario learn about power-ups, which, okay, you learn about power-ups from the movie, but you certainly wouldn't learn how to play the game or how the game actually plays from the movie. And then you see Mario jumping through a 3D level, a 3D interpretation in CGI of what a 2D Mario level might be, and you see him fail miserably. Contrast that to Princess Peach, who shows off at the first time and beats the level on the first try, doing completely parkour impossible moves that you just would not be able to do in any actual Mario game. And that is probably me being too picky to say that in the sequences where there is action, it should 100% follow the actions of the game, but it's not anywhere close. They are literally just action scenes that could have been in any other action movie with some Mario stuff added. They make a point to belittle Mario a little bit more, and I haven't gotten into this yet, by pointing out that Princess Peach defeated that level on her first try, and there are no other levels that were shown, whereas Mario failed multiple times and never actually succeeded on the level. Yet Princess Peach still decides to let him follow her to their next destination and eventually try and save Luigi. Even before that point, they had pretty much belittled Mario as a unsuccessful short. There's a full list that you get of what he is called later on. He's called short, he's called worthless, he's called weak and scared by the end of the movie, which is just all kinds of negativity in a kid's movie, which there's more of that, and it's just not what I think of when I think of Mario. So yeah, it's not like they're bringing up all boats as it goes. They are definitely making Princess Peach the more attractive, more successful character at the expense of Luigi and Mario. At this point, you have the Bowser character, once again adding something that has never really been in canon. I think Bowser probably did play a piano in a small section in Mario RPG. Maybe the makers of this movie were big fans of Mario RPG, but inherently it's worth pointing out that Nintendo wasn't really a big fans of Mario RPG, because that was made by Square Enix, and it was supposedly supposed to lead to more of a Final Fantasy characters tie-in experience, and that is why there was never really a sequel to Mario All-Stars or Mario RPG, and instead you see Paper Mario series eventually replace it. But yeah, you see Bowser playing the piano because it's Jack Black. And then you see him finding out that Mario's around and becoming incredibly jealous that there is another potential suitor for Princess Peach, which honestly not totally out of character for Bowser. We definitely do see, at least in Mario Odyssey, that Bowser is infatuated and wants to marry Princess Peach. We've seen that multiple times in games. But seeing him hurt a minion slamming the piano cover on the hands of a minion is a little violent for a kid's movie, and not something we've really seen. Not in the canonical games. I'm assuming all the comic books, all the previous cartoons, all of that you have to throw out and assume it's not canonical. The live action movie, obviously not canonical. But yeah, him playing the piano is very much more Jack Black wanting to have a song on the soundtrack and get royalties from it more than anything that needed to be in the movie. You hear just the beginning of his song, Peach is there, and they actually play just a few notes of a traditional game, a traditional Mario game song before stopping it. Then they start playing Take On Me, once again a pop song that would be listened to the parents of people who had an NES as a kid more than kids listening to that song. And really it was at that point that I was losing even more attention, and I was thinking to myself, why did the movie not just start in the Mushroom Kingdom? It would have saved a good 10 to 20 minutes just to start in the Mushroom Kingdom, just to focus on Mario's journey of acclimating somewhat to the Mushroom Kingdom. He could have been there for a few days, already training, getting ready. But yeah, the whole Brooklyn section makes very little sense to me as far as just good time economy. And it only gets multiplied and doubled at the end of the movie in that you have a giant big boss fight taking place again in Brooklyn when there's just no need for that. Even animation economy would dictate that had they just started in the Mushroom Kingdom and ended in the Mushroom Kingdom, they wouldn't have had to animate quite a lot of stuff. But the plan after the training section and the breakaway to see Bowser play the piano is to have the Donkey Kongs or the Kong Army under control of Cranky Kong and his son Donkey Kong and his grandson Donkey Kong Jr. Diddy Kong would be the grandson that they mentioned. They're eliminating Donkey Kong Jr. It's generally accepted that Cranky Kong in Donkey Kong Country, the animation, is supposed to be somehow the Donkey Kong in the Donkey Kong arcade game. And it is Donkey Kong Jr. from the second arcade NES game that is actually the Donkey Kong you see in the Donkey Kong cartoon from many years ago. And then Diddy Kong at that point would be the third generation child or nephew or whatever of the generations there. Which is just about the same. It just eliminates, it's the same as they showed it in the movie. It just eliminates saying Donkey Kong Jr. As a reference. There's a huge focus once they get to the Kong Country land away from the Mushroom Kingdom, which that's where Princess Peach is going to try and convince Cranky Kong to bring her Kong army to attack Bowser and defend the Mushroom Kingdom for her. There's a huge focus there around Mario Kart. Like as soon as you get in the gate It is just ramps and Mario Kart carts, modern Mario Kart 8 style carts. It's not any kind of throwback at all. You don't really see any kind of level that is a reference to the Donkey Kong arcade games or any of the rare Donkey Kong Country games, which Nintendo's not particularly wanting to promote those games anyways, so that kind of makes sense. Donkey Kong 64, not really referenced. You could have made a really old reference to like Donkey Kong Junior Math or whatever that was called for the NES, but no, they didn't do anything like that. The entire next 10 minutes or so is just around having a stunt actor as Diddy Kong talk to set up a fight between Donkey Kong and Mario, and then it is just a fight sequence / training level like we've seen before, with pretty much the same intent, which is to show that Mario is not capable of actually defeating Donkey Kong at all and is incompetent, and he eats like a blue mushroom which makes him smaller, thinking that that would actually help him. And yeah, I just watched the movie and I don't even remember how the fight ended. I'm pretty sure Mario just lost the fight, but for some reason it convinced Cranky Kong to send his Kong army with them anyways. Yeah, which kind of doesn't even make sense. No, what happens, pointless sequence, is Mario gets the catsuit power up, and with the catsuit power up, Mario is capable of defeating Donkey Kong, and that's how Cranky Kong sends his army. Once again, Mario with the catsuit doing actions and fighting in ways that I don't think really exist in the games in which you can get the catsuit power up. It all is a waste of time. Like, from the beginning of the Donkey Kong sequence to pretty much the end of the Donkey Kong sequence is just a total waste of time, because after Cranky Kong promises his Kong army, they go to what looks to me like a Mad Max reference, where you see a lot of monkeys unnamed that look like Mad Max characters to me, and I just don't think that they have names or have any reference to any games. They get into a bunch of Mario Kart style carts with perhaps more weapons than you would see in a Mario Kart cart, and then they start driving on a ramp, which eventually leads them to a Star Road. But before we get to the Star Road, I do have to point out that Princess Peach, out of nowhere, is now dressed in a motorcycle suit. I'm not sure where the suit came from, but it's definitely not anything you've ever seen Princess Peach wear before, except for maybe she wears it in one of the Mario Kart games. But no other character throughout the game gets any significant suit changes that are unexplained or not related to her power-up. There are times later where Princess Peach gets power-up and her dress changes from white to blue, or Mario gets a power-up and his outfit changes somewhat. He gets put in a what they call raccoon suit, but more traditionally would have been called a tanuki suit. They never make reference to the tanuki suit, and nor do they make anything reference to the Japanese origins of Mario and the names of the games. But yeah, they get on these motorcycles, they go on the Star Road, then they're ambushed by Bowser. There was a point there in the middle of the movie where Bowser also tortures Luigi by pulling his mustache to get information about Mario. Luigi succumbs to the torture on the second threat of tugging his mustache, and gives up his brother, which arguably was not a good way to characterize Luigi. And again, it is just kind of a violent, a little violent depending on the age of the kids. Like, I'm not going to make any kind of drastic claim to say that Mario Brothers movie is inappropriate for anybody over the age of probably 7, but if you were to bring a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old in there, if you were bringing in a kid that, in all honesty, probably couldn't even sit through the entire length of the movie, there might be some violent sections there that might have them react more than you would expect. But yeah, back to the current point, the Kong army is chased for a while on the Rainbow Road with Princess Peach on a bike. They do a little bit of flirting, which goes nowhere, between Mario and Luigi. Not Mario and Luigi, that would be something, wouldn't it? Mario and Princess Peach do a little bit of flirting, with Donkey Kong basically constantly nagging and saying negative things about Mario. Again, just degrading him as a character. I don't see how you couldn't come out with this movie and feel like Mario as a character is supposed to be a joke, and he's just never really been the joke or the butt of a joke in any of the video games. Luigi, maybe a little bit there, but even Luigi is still supposed to be your secondary protagonist, your hero, where this movie does nothing to try to make Mario the hero. So you have Toad, you have Donkey Kong, you have Princess Peach, and you have Mario leading up this long caravan of the Kong army people, monkeys, and then they're ambushed from behind by Bowser and his troops, which he has a massive amount of troops, which really you only see them fight 3 or 4 of them. I do think that there is a different way that you could have told the story in which Mario would have had to have gone more of a boss rush mode throughout the movie, fighting different characters throughout the games. But really, Mario defeats Bowser and some turtles, and that may be about it. So you get a lot of cameos, even cameos where Bowser makes a joke that he doesn't even know what a Spiny Spike character is called, which I think they're called Spiny Spikes from Super Mario Brothers 3, I believe. But yeah, there definitely were like dry bone skeletons that never were named or anything like that. So certainly if you were a young kid and you'd never seen these characters before in the game, you wouldn't know their name after this movie, and you may think that they were just made up for the movie. So if you ever did see them in a future Mario game, you would think that they came from the movie originally. The ambush totally works. They end up breaking the Star Road and causing Donkey Kong and Mario to fall into the ocean, whereas Princess Peach and Toad end up going further, but I think fairly quickly getting captured by Bowser too. Regardless, the Kong army is basically immediately captured and eliminated from the movie, which, if you were going to do that, you could have saved yourself a few minutes of a Mad Max reference chase sequence with including the Kong army by just having Bowser attack the Donkey Kong Country land first, and then have just Princess Peach, Donkey Kong, Mario, and Toad be the only people on the road to start with. It definitely feels like they're just really stretching to give like Cranky Kong a few more lines of dialogue there, just because of the stunt voice acting, which I will say, the stunt casting for the most part doesn't matter. It's good enough. Nobody really sounds 100% like you would expect them to sound, but none of them really sound too terrible for the lowered expectations of a kids movie. The biggest problem, I think, definitely is going to just be Bowser himself being played by Jack Black, and then Jack Black at taking some more time in the movie to play piano and make up a song, the Peaches song, which, yeah, in an already long movie, that I really feel like this movie would have been best if it was a tight 90 minutes. I think to be a full theatrical release, you only have to go 88 minutes long is the requirement for most theaters. Otherwise, it's considered a short film, but it's definitely felt like this was 2 hours, maybe over 2 hours of movie when it really didn't need to be that. At the very beginning of the movie, you see Bowser capture a superstar, which are the stars from like Super Mario Bros. 1 that make you invisible, not to be confused with the power stars, which are 3D stars from Super Mario 64, which you collected to unlock more levels. I'm not sure why they chose to go with superstars, other than it is used as a superstar at the very end of the game movie to make Mario and Luigi, both Mario and Luigi, using one superstar, which is not canonical to the game, to be invincible for longer than you probably would have been invincible in any game for using that star. But up until that point, the superstar is just implied to have ultimate power, which at the very beginning, there's a whole section where Bowser defeats a bunch of penguins in their castle and kidnaps all the penguin characters. In that, he does a fire breath attack that just like melts their entire ice kingdom to get to the superstar. So he shows himself to be more than capable in at least 2 points to probably conquer the entire video game world without a superstar at all. So, yeah. Princess Peach and Toad basically get captured and forgotten about for a little bit. Meanwhile, Donkey Kong and Mario get swallowed by an unrecognizable giant fish. It looks kind of like a giant eel or something. It's just not something that I recognize from any Mario game. Maybe there's a Kirby or Yoshi's game that introduces a giant fish. You do see bluebirds in the ocean, and they make reference to that. It is kind of funny for them to even bother to make any kind of reference to water levels, since there are not really that many water levels these days in modern Mario games. But yeah, they get swallowed by a whale, and it really is just an excuse to have kind of a pointless discussion between Donkey Kong and Mario. I guess it does establish that Mario saves Donkey Kong, which in reality, if Donkey Kong was a gorilla, he would have totally drowned. Like, gorillas just don't have the ability to swim at all. So Mario does save Donkey Kong, and Donkey Kong says, "You saved me," at which point Mario says, "I won't tell anybody," and then Donkey Kong says, "Thank you." So he's still just like negging him. He doesn't say thank you as in thank you for saving me. He says thank you for not embarrassing me by telling anybody that I was saved by you. And then they have an argument. Donkey Kong claims that he isn't just a person that smashes things while smashing his hands all around and throwing a fit, which is how they figure out to convince the fish to eventually burp them up and get them outside of the water level, which overall was kind of pointless, which you could kind of say for the entirety of the movie. It really is very much, we need to get from point A to point B, and then we'll figure out the rest. And there are just fights that pop up. Toad, Princess Peach agrees to marry Bowser on the grounds that he would not kill, I think, Mario. But then once she's standing at the altar, he's already set up in plans and is ritually sacrificing all of the penguins he had captured, all the Donkey Kong gang that he'd captured, and Luigi. And he's just slowly lowering all of these hanging cages down into lava. Included in his captured victims is the Mario Odyssey, I forget what they're called. It's kind of a flying star-like creature. This character shows up a couple times as they cut away, showing Luigi just captured, again just making him the damsel in distress. And the Mario Galaxy character is basically a psychopathic, depressed person that is saying depressing, dire things, making all the other victims who have been captured even more depressed and dour. And they repeat that theme right to the end when you get to the credits, as far as that character, which I don't think any of that is actually the personality of that character, even though those kinds of characters did speak in Mario Galaxy. I don't think they were so depressive. Even if they were, it's, again, just a little age inappropriate for what I imagine they thought was a joke, but I think you could have certainly gone the exact opposite direction and done just about the same kind of joke, where you would have had some character locked up, say a Toad, or Toadette or something, which she doesn't show up in the movie. You could have had Toadette captured, and you could have had her been super positive all the time and trying and encourage everybody to not give up hope, and then you could have a little bit of groaning from everybody else who'd been captured. They would have gotten the exact same type of laugh as Toadette tries increasingly desperate and silly things to try to escape, which that could have been something. Certainly if you saw Luigi trying to escape, you don't see him even try throughout the movie. But yeah. So Princess Peach gets smuggled by the one Toad called Toad. I assume this is supposed to be Captain Toad from his backpack. A ice flower hidden in her wedding bouquet. And once she stands up, Bowser says, "I'm going to ritually sacrifice all my kidnapped victims for you." And then she immediately punches the subordinate of Bowser, who is officiating the wedding, and then pulls out the blue ice thing, ice flower power up, and starts attacking Bowser. Again, doing kung fu type actions. Nobody swoops in to save her. She is clearly the protagonist and the hero here. She's not a damsel in distress that is actually, for any prolonged amount of time, at threat of actually being forced to marry him, nor is she a royal who might actually agree to marry him to save her people. There is at no point in the story any thought or discussion on those lines where it feels like Princess Peach actually would sacrifice her own freedom to save her kingdom. Mario gets the Tanuki suit, called a raccoon suit, also called a bear by Luigi. And him and Donkey Kong are running up a long path to get to the wedding and eventually try and fight Bowser and save Luigi from falling into a lava-filled pit, which they accomplish. There is at that point a element where Bowser is not actually defeated, but he's feeling like he's close to being defeated, so he launches a giant bullet bill. Now, at the very beginning of the movie, back in Brooklyn, there was this dog that looks like a dog from The Secret Life of Pets. And I imagine that might be kind of a crossover reference. And Luigi steps on the dog's bone and breaks it. The dog gets mad at them and attacks them as they're acting on their first plumbing job. And in being attacked, the dog damages the plumbing horribly and makes a huge mess. There is no real cutesy way in which they handle the dog. And it is very much just kind of a pointless scene that once again shows that even as plumbers, Mario and Luigi are incompetent and unsuccessful. What almost certainly in my mind should have happened is that they should have learned a trick to handle this dog at the beginning, and then echoed that trick and come full circle to treat the bullet bill, which often is acting like in video games. It kind of sounds like a dog, it wolfs, it definitely, in Mario 64 you see the chain chomps act like dogs too. But yeah, it definitely would have made sense to come full circle and have this bullet bill be handled by them throwing a bone or something to convince the bullet bill to go in a different direction. Instead of that happening, because I don't want to go into too much detail on that speculative rewrite of how the movie would go, because I'm not here to rewrite the whole movie. I would change so much if I did that. Instead of doing that, they just have Mario in, I think, still in the Tanuki suit at that point, which allows him to fly around, so that they save a lot of time by just having him fly around in areas. It is also worth pointing out that the Star Road scene, the Bowser fight scene, at those points, they're really not establishing a background and a layout of what you're seeing. So if you're trying to follow along and figure out where they've been and where they've gone, you'll just never be able to do it. It is effectively them flying around in a vacuum area with no up or down, left or right. No telling how long they had driven on the Star Road or how long he had flown in the Tanuki suit. But anyways, you have a giant bullet bill. It's about to crash on Princess Peach's castle. Mario tries to get his attention, fails to convince him to attack him, then uses his Tanuki suit to spin around and kick into the eye of the bullet bill, which then angers him and has him instantly turn 90 degrees on a dime and start chasing Mario instead of crashing into the castle. Later, we see this giant bullet bill explode, and it creates an explosion that almost certainly would have been big enough to blow up the Princess Peach's castle and Mario from the distance he was, easily. But yeah, there is no attacks where you kick into somebody's eye. It's kind of more violent than you'd see in a Mario game, and just not really connected to that. Weirdly, also throughout the movie, you really only see Mario jump on like one turtle shell, which would be his main form of attack for his early games, at least, is that you would be jumping on top of things. The Mario in this movie has really no skill or specialty in that at all, in that he's not really good at jumping enough that you see it as a special skill. So he convinces the giant bullet bill to chase after him, which then gets him, the bullet bill, close enough to a green warp pipe, which is what they used to reach the video game world from the Brooklyn real world, both of which are animated, just to make sure everybody knows that, in basically the same animation style. So this giant bullet bill goes through the green pipe. There is kind of a warp zone like area, although it doesn't really look like any warp zone you would have seen in a game, in between the pipe that exits to Brooklyn and the pipe that exits to the video game world. And in that warp zone, the bullet bill explodes, which creates a big sucking vacuum action. Why? I don't know. It seems like if there was an explosion, it would be pushing forces outward, not sucking things back in. But who knows? That creates a sucking action, which brings Bowser's flying ship, which isn't even worth mentioning other than it exists, and that's how Bowser has been moving around, and that seems to be his just general domain, that he doesn't have an actual land that he calls home. But it sucks that in and takes it back to Brooklyn, which then for a brief moment you're in this Brooklyn disaster movie where it definitely for maybe a minute or two feels like it's just going to be a disaster movie in which Bowser's floating ship and his troops, and Bowser in particular, the focus I think is mostly just Bowser, is just going to play Godzilla and destroy Brooklyn. But then that kind of falls apart and stops being a disaster movie, and then it is just Mario fighting Bowser. Mario is getting beat up. At one point he's hiding to get a breather, I suppose, and that's when he is called short, worthless, weak, and scared. I think all of that is said by Bowser in that one sentence. It is worth also pointing out, just as far as the badness of the writing, is that there are several times throughout the movie that Mario says to Luigi, if the two of us are together, we can never get hurt. Which what's the actual phrase here? It's nothing can hurt us as long as we're together, is the actual phrase that they say. The first time they say that through the movie is right before Luigi and Mario get split up, so kind of a lie there. Second time they say it, I think Mario and Luigi get beat up by Bowser. And third time they say it is right before they get the invincibility star, and so it actually works on the third time. It's not really a consistent theme. If the theme throughout the movie was supposed to be brothership and working together, you wouldn't have made a movie where you split Luigi and Mario apart for 95% of the movie, if not more. It is definitely just a saying that's proven wrong more often than it's proven right. When they get the invincibility star, which Bowser had just kind of dropped when he got sucked into Brooklyn, they play a cover song version of the invincibility song from a traditional Mario game. So even at the pinnacle of the movie experience, they're not willing to just let you have any kind of real nostalgia and hear the invincibility song as you would have known it from Super Mario Bros. 1, 2, or 3. Instead they want to do a cover song. Nothing really wrong with the cover song, but there was nothing wrong with the original, and certainly you don't have that nostalgia. At that point, they pretty much defeat Bowser, and around those times you have Princess Peach being called Peaches by Bowser, which is an odd nickname that's never been in the game. You have Mario called Mustache from Princess Peach, which is a odd nickname. And that's close to the end of the movie. They come back, and I guess this is the only real callback of note, is they force feed a blue mushroom, which Mario had previously eaten and made him shrink tiny, to Bowser, and they trap him in a jar. Later on you see they put him in a cage in the Princess Peach's castle, and he has a tiny little piano and is just imprisoned there, and that's the end of Bowser. Him again being Jack Black, the voice actor, singing a new song, or starting to sing a new song and not even getting to the end there. You also have Bowser playing the Peaches song in the credits, which it's worth pointing out that there are, I believe, 3 credit animation break sequences for a kids movie, where, particularly for kids movie, I would like to see them just pop up a screen that says there are no more scenes after this point. You can leave, and now there's no more secrets. Of course, for other movies they want people to sit through the credits, but for kids they're not going to sit through the movie credits and read the names of the creators. I suppose it is also worth pointing out that, like, Shigeru Miyamoto, the alleged maker of Mario, I assume he really is credited first as a producer of the Mario movie, but I wouldn't be surprised if he actually did very little and had very little involvement with it. I definitely think that there probably was fairly tight Nintendo oversight in general of the movie, but then there also feels like most of the actual creative input was coming from non-Nintendo people, with Nintendo just giving a thumbs up or a thumbs down to any ideas. At the end you see more humans, pointless, just random people. Mario has like a whole family. Mario and Luigi have a whole family, which in some games it definitely is implied that Mario and Luigi are the only family they have. In this movie they have like a father, it looks like they have a mother, it looks like they have uncles. There is a young character sitting around their dinner table that comes back. She's at the beginning of the movie and you see her again. She never says anything. I have no idea who that's supposed to really represent at all. There was a reference for like a baby Mario and baby Luigi sequence at some point too, which is more of a reference to a game. But yeah, as far as the Brooklyn people, they do just feel like they are random people. You do have like Wreck-It Ralph or Spike from the Wrecking Crew, not Wreck-It Ralph, the person who Wreck-It Ralph would have been inspired by. He shows up as a character and you think he's going to be like a bully guy, bad guy at the beginning of the movie, and nothing really happens with him. He cheers Mario at the end after beating Bowser, but there really is no real story there. Seemingly Mario and Luigi worked for Spike in the Wrecking Crew originally, and then they left to make their own plumbing company, and then they get made fun of at the very beginning of the movie for spending all of their life savings to make a commercial and being bad actors and wearing white gloves as plumbers. The end of the movie happens and you have that depressing Galaxy character show up again, poo-pooing effectively on a happy ending as much as possible. I suppose it is interesting to point out, now that I think about it, since Princess Peach, or this character they're calling Princess Peach in the movie, is the main protagonist throughout the vast majority of the movie, it is kind of crazy that she is out of the picture in the last fight. She really doesn't do anything at all. The last you see her fighting is at the wedding sequence, and then she kind of disappears, which is a problem you'll see in movies when you have way too many characters and just not a good enough focus. There is definitely a way you could have set up this movie so that it would have been Toad, Luigi, Mario, and Princess Peach were the group of 4 heroes, and they were together for the vast majority of the movie, and then they all grew in equal measure and all fought together to defeat Bowser. You do see Mario and Luigi sharing the invisibility star and doing a Bowser toss at the end, so you have those two fighting together. which doesn't really resolve anything because Mario and Luigi never were at any odds or conflict. So as soon as Mario and Luigi were in the same area, they would have worked together. But yeah, that's pretty much the movie. The depressing Galaxy character, then a couple more sequences. They tease Yoshi at the very end like that's something special, but they had already shown Yoshi's at the beginning of the movie and just not really done anything with them. And introducing Yoshi as a character doesn't really do anything at all. If you were going to tease a character at the end of the movie, it needed to have been some other bad guy character other than Bowser, or it needed to be Bowser escaping, and as such setting up for a sequel. There's nothing interesting in having a Mario movie sequel, which almost certainly they will make because it made a ton of money and was very successful. But yeah, there's nothing interesting having Yoshi show up. You needed a new enemy character, and the Mario series mostly is Bowser, so you really needed Bowser to escape or start plotting his escape. I said before, and I'll say it again, the stunt casting was probably a waste of money, but it was fine. Except for Jack Black. I think Jack Black would have been fine as a stunt casted character if you reined him in and stopped him from playing piano sequences 2 times throughout the movie and just making the movie long. The whole movie needed several more passes, 2 or 3 more passes on the script as far as what was going to happen and why it was important for those things to happen, and it needed to be heavily edited down to be a shorter experience. I want to wrap up here. This has been a long review, and typically I'm not a movie reviewer. I'm a video game critic who at the moment is not even really playing video games and in long plays and uploading them, and then instead is really just doing live news on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, video game news, and just kind of a podcast experience. But yeah, as a video game fan who's played a lot of Mario games, at no point was I nostalgic for a Mario game. At no point did this movie make me want to go and play a Mario game. I think the story, of which there really isn't ever a lot of story in Mario games, have been better. Mario Odyssey in particular has a better story at the end and a better reveal. And because you have that grindiness of something like Mario Odyssey, where it's hours and hours and hours of collecting and going to different levels and many different boss fights, it feels way more impactful than it really should, just because of how long it takes it. Mario Odyssey at the end was the point where Princess Peach started to really have a personality. Her in the final cutscene of Mario Odyssey rejecting both Mario and Bowser's romantic advances establishes the beginning of a thought for Nintendo that she would actually be a character with a personality, and that she is just kind of fed up with going through the same actions over and over again and being a damsel in distress. Although it's worth pointing out that Shigeru Miyamoto has said in the past that he considered all of the Mario characters to be actors doing plays. So every game is supposed to just be a play, and that this is just an acting troupe that works together. And so Princess Peach in previous games could very well be described as playing the role of a damsel in distress every time. And that has always been their explanation as to why you have Mario Party games with Bowser playing tabletop board games with Mario, or why you have Mario Kart and you have the bad guy characters playing them, or you have Mario Soccer or any of the other sports games. So that is their way, certainly, to not make anything particularly canonical unless it is an actual named sequel. One assumes that Mario Galaxy 2 is a direct sequel to Mario Galaxy 1. But most Mario games are not named or numbered sequels. to each other. So the events of Mario 64, very possibly not in the same timeline or universe as the events of Mario Odyssey. The next Mario game to come out, which likely we're going to see a Switch 2 Mario game come out, will very possibly not be connected to Odyssey. There's usually a different gimmick for every Mario game that they try, and I imagine the next Mario game is not going to have the character controlling hats ability gimmick that Mario Odyssey had, which Cappy as a character, nowhere to be seen in the Mario Brothers movie, which I think is kind of interesting that he wasn't included, although I don't know how he would really play a role. Again, that would get back to just rewriting the whole movie in a different way. And it is noticeable in Mario Odyssey that technically the damsel in distress in Mario Odyssey is Princess Peach and her crown, which is Cappy's sister, I believe, being kidnapped. So that's easy to throw out there. I guess it doesn't really change too much. Yeah, seeing the movie, it just never made me nostalgic. I'm not coming out of it wanting to play a Mario game at all. That being said, I started this whole review saying that I'm almost certainly not the target audience for this movie. So compare this movie to the small selection of kids movies for your 7-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds. You could probably even convince a 16-year-old to watch the Mario Brothers movie. They will almost certainly have a good enough time just because of the social experience, talking with their friends. And that's generally all that matters, is if they are having that good common social experience with their friends to talk about, to have those water cooler moments, which really wouldn't be water coolers in a school these days, but yeah, those playground type conversations. So I wouldn't withhold the Super Mario Brothers from any kid, and I wouldn't rant to a kid telling them that this movie sucks, particularly when they can point to the live action Super Mario Bros. Movie, which is way worse, and you really have to be willing to watch some pretty terrible acting and movie making to enjoy the live action Mario Brothers movie. You have to go in it knowing that it's going to be a campy, bad experience. But yeah, it definitely is not, I think, in any way trying to accommodate actual fans who played the original Super Mario Bros. Game or Super Mario World on the Super NES. Weirdly, though, it is targeting the parents of fans of modern Mario games, like Mario Odyssey, but not even really targeting the fans of Mario Odyssey specifically, because there really is no reference to Mario Odyssey. Maybe the movie was in development even before Mario Odyssey was released, as a small possibility, but then I guess that might make sense then why they're referencing Mario Galaxy so much, is that Mario Galaxy 2 may have been the last mainline Mario game to come out before Odyssey did. But yeah, if that was the case, you could have replaced the Mario Galaxy character with Cappy pretty easily. It's only in 2 or 3 scenes, but that didn't happen. So yeah, I'm not going to end this giving any kind of 5 out of 5 stars or 10 out of 10 stars or any kind of rating. That's not the point here of this experiment of a movie review. And really, this is just an experiment overall. So if you like this experiment, the best I can ask is for you to try and find something else on my channel to watch. My playlist tab has a playlist for every game I've ever covered. I do long plays. I'm talking while I'm playing games. They have a tendency to be more mature for adults. They are not really targeting young kids. There is real commentary there. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I ramble maybe a little bit more in my podcast live streams as I cover video game news and go through all the new games that have released on Steam in the past couple days. That is the content that I'm doing most of. If you subscribe to my channel, you may also see YouTube shorts for a selection of new games that have come out on Steam to see something new. So there is definitely a lot going, and my main focus here is to try to get watch time. On that being said, subscription certainly would be appreciated. Click the notification bell if you would be so kind, and if you can put up with the amount of notifications that will come from doing that. And yeah, sharing to social media is always still very helpful, and otherwise sticking to videos, watching them all the way through, watching them a second time is all very helpful. Comments and feedback on this is helpful. Remember, this is just a critic's review of the movie, and as a critic I'm inherently going to really only talk about the negatives in anything, so please be aware of that as you're putting any comments. But yeah, any comments or critics, I doubt I'm going to go out of my way, even if this was a super successful video, to go and watch more video game movies, because honestly there aren't that many. And you definitely get into a situation like the Fallout TV series where that is very disconnected from what any of the Fallout games are, and it is really just more of a speculative fan fiction of the Fallout series. And the Fallout TV series I do think was very good, but I would have a very hard time comparing it to Fallout New Vegas or Fallout 3 or Fallout 4, because all of those games are their own different thing. Anyways, so I don't go any longer, that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks.